This part will explain about data acquisition, mainly on data crawling process and the component included in the process. Data acquisition is a process to get data from World Wide Web into system. Crawler gets data which will be processed by Spark into Kafka, and then it will be mapped into HBase. Crawler is engine used to get data from World Wide Web, mainly HTML data. The data will be saved as HTML, which will be parsed by Parser later to get the intended data. This is the illustration for crawler. We may use more than one crawler to get data from World Wide Web. Depends on the site, especially for e-commerce. We can separate the crawler into two categories: index crawler to get HTML for index pages, and content crawler to get HTML for detail pages. This is a more detailed illustration for crawler. As we can see, it contains many parts like MariaDB, Pusher, Beanstalk, and SSDB. Pusher is an engine used to send URL from MariaDB to Beanstalk. It will read category URL and then reformat it into JSON. SSDB is NoSQL database which can store key value data. We use SSDB as hash storage to prevent multiple crawl of same page. Beanstalk is a queue. We use Beanstalk to queue the URL needed to crawl so we can distribute it equally to all available workers. MariaDB is relational databases. We use MariaDB to store all category link, which will be retrieved by Pusher to send to Beanstalk. Cron is a scheduler in Unix-like computer OS. We use cron to manage starting time for crawlers. Starting from MariaDB, Pusher will read category URL and send it to queue at Beanstalk. And then index crawler will send requests to the URL. The HTML response will be saved, and then index crawler will extract the URL for contents and send it to queue at Beanstalk for content crawler. Starting from Beanstalk, content crawler will check the URL to SSDB. If not registered yet, content crawler will request the URL. The HTML response will be saved, and then it will register the URL at SSDB. For the crawling process, we use Mydin as case study to be crawled and process the data until we get the HTML file. This is the main display page of Mydin that we are going to crawl as case study. This is a snippet for Pusher. It will get category URL from MariaDB and then send it into Beanstalk. This is the data sent by Pusher to Beanstalk, which will be used by index crawler. This is the index page, which will be saved by index crawler. This is the snippet for index crawler. It will extract the URL to content page and save the response as HTML. This is the sample HTML from Index Crawler, which contains URL to content page. This is the data sent by Index Crawler to Beanstalk, which will be used by Content Crawler. This is the content page, which will be saved by Content Crawler. This is the snippet of Content Crawler. It will save the response as HTML file. Apache Spark is framework used for in-memory cluster computing, which implicit data parallelism and fault tolerance. We use Apache Spark as framework for Parser and Consumer. Apache Kafka is a streaming platform which is scalable and fault tolerant. We use Apache Kafka as buffer or temporary storage before we send the data into HBase. Apache HBase is column-oriented key-value data store, which able to store large quantities of sparse data. We use HBase to store all data as data lake. Parser is an engine to extract data from raw HTML into intended format like JSON. It will send the parsed data into Kafka. This is the illustration for Parser. Parser engine will Spark framework to parse data into Kafka. Consumer engine is used to send data from Kafka into HBase. It will map the data from JSON into columnar table at HBase. This is the illustration for Consumer. Consumer engine will use Spark to map data from Kafka into HBase. For study case, we will use Mydin. We will try to get the data from Mydin, starting from HTML until data at HBase. This is the snippet code for crawler. It will send requests to intended URL, and after obtaining the response, it will save the HTML. This is the sample HTML from crawler, including parts which we want to parse later at Parser, like title, price, and link. This is the snippet code for Parser. It will extract parts of HTML based on selector and then send it to Kafka. This is the JSON result from Parser engine, which will be sent to Kafka. It will include most of details, including site name. This is the snippet code for Consumer. It will parse JSON data from Kafka and then map it into HBase tables. This is the data stored at HBase table, which has columnar model. For price, we use detail, price dash date. This is the specification for servers used for data acquisition process, consisting of 10 servers using CentOS 7 as OS, Java 8 and Python 3 as programming language. The next slide shows a video crawling result example showing the list of HTML file and the example of content inside the HTML. The next slide shows a video of crawling result of Mydin in CSV format.